Hi, this is Anna Imagination with a Healing Garden, and welcome to Shifting Perspectives. If you are new to my work, I am a philosopher, sociologist, and a psychologist of 30 years, and this is my lab. This is a combination of my research journals, and it is also my laboratory where I sit down and I write it out. So, um, this was just a faster way to write everything down instead of journaling and documenting all of my research. I realized, why don't I do a blog? Because it's just so much easier to write out all of my discoveries, researches, all this. So today we're talking about people pleasing. I just saw a connection that just blared up like an anomaly. I love anomalies. And I went, whoa, there's something going on here. So I am taking the gloves off. This is going to be one of those things where I am in research mode. Of all the types of modes I get into, this is my favorite because this is when real shit fucking happens. So here's how this works. The first thing I do is I eliminate everything we thought we knew about mental illness because it's wrong. They use something called inductive reasoning, which is garbage. Inductive reasoning is when you sit back, you look at somebody, you observe them, and without any other information other than your eyeballs watching, you make assumptions and you conclude. That's all it is. And then you watch other people, you make assumptions, and you conclude. This is inductive reasoning. It's one of the 4 philosophical logical formats used, and it is the most inefficient. And it started back in the 1800s, compliments of Freud, and they still do it. The format I use is called deductive reasoning. This is when you use theorems, proofs, logical fallacies, and logical checks and balances to make sure the work is correct. So as a result, as you can see, when you look at my psychology versus their psychology, my psychology is based off of like 100% pure logic. And when I present it to people, they're going, oh my God, that makes so much sense. It's deductive reasoning. And basically, I observe people, their emotions. I come up with a conclusion, which is inductive reasoning. By the way, when you do this properly, you're supposed to use all 4 logical pieces, all 4 of them, not just one. You're supposed to use inductive reasoning, and then you're supposed to form a thesis. And then you're supposed to take the thesis, this is the next part, and you present it to somebody, this is my thesis, and then you analyze it. So what I do is when I observe someone, I take their emotions. It's the same emotions I feel. I go inside my own brain. I pull out my emotions. I run down everything and I conclude based off of that. And that's what I call a psychological law or a law of an emotional law. They are almost identical to Newton's laws of physics. For instance, the third law of physics is a reaction. Any reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. In emotional law, when you manifest, you have an emotional reaction, and that produces an equal and opposite reaction. For instance, I break down and cry, and someone comes over and says, oh my God, are you okay? See, emotions are physics. So once I figured that out, I was able to deduce that emotions, when you figure out which ones are what at certain time periods, you can basically find predictability. So I will then write a theory and I will present it to people and I will do research. Hey, when you have this emotion, when you feel depressed, when you're doing this, is this the emotional response you feel? When I get more than 100 people all confirming with 100% accuracy, and I call it my 100 out of 100 rule, 100% accuracy out of 100 interviews, then that's when I upgrade it, I upgrade it from a theory to a premise. Now I can use it in a formula proof theorem, a logical proof as a premise. And then, okay, so if person A feels this, well, if person feels this, and if person feels this, then this is the conclusion. And again, then I run it through a system of logical checks and balances. And that confirms, again, 100 out of 100, 100% accuracy out of 100 interviews. And then I put it on my case study and I watch it. I'll do little samples here and there. I'll do like little research moments where I'll sit down and I'll do an interview with somebody. And within the first 30 minutes to an hour, we'll resolve the issue. And also, this is the other thing, it is zero zero regression. There's no regression with this because you remove the logical fallacy. And the whole point of this is to disprove the logical fallacy using logic. And that is literally how you cure mental illness, is you have to disprove using logic the logical fallacy. So we have a new one. Now, as I write up these theories that I've upgraded to premise, they're on my website. You can literally go through, I have 17 of them already. And you can go through my website and read my premise. And these premise are the ones that have 100 out of 100. It's what I've accumulated for 30 years. And these are the theorems that I use in my logical proofs so I can plug in the appropriate emotional response to figure out precisely what's wrong with people. This is how I navigate the subconscious mind. So here's the new one. Again, throwing out, assume we know nothing about psychology up to now. People pleasing is a mental disease, a mental illness, a behavioral defense. People pleasing is not a symptom. It is the thing. Now, I'm going to get real ugly with our truth here, and I kind of don't care because language is the problem. This people pleasing is actually what I call slave mind. And it is a triggered mental condition. It is a mindset. All mental behaviors are mindsets. And this particular mindset has a trigger. The triggered response, it acts like PTSD, but it's not PTSD, but it acts just like it. So when you get around somebody and a certain ABC triggers happen, it sets off not to send you into a hysterical or shaking or unstable PTSD episode, it switches you over to slave mind. Now, I cured mine, kind of. No, I didn't. This is why. This is interesting. There's two parts happening here, and this was my great epiphany before I jumped on here. There's this mindset, the slave mind, but there's also, are you ready for this one? People are going to love this. People are going to love this. Some people have a significant high sensitivity to maltreatment. It means you're allergic to abuse. This is me. You just are highly sensitive to maltreatment. You are allergic to abuse. Now, we are going to assume for a moment, I'm going to use a peanut allergy. A person could be born loving without a problem with peanuts. And then they will do nothing but overexpose themselves to peanuts. In fact, this happened to my ex. Is all he ate for months at one point in his life, due to the starvation that he had to undergo due to the abuse he suffered, was an overexposure to peanuts. He ate literally nothing but peanut butter for like 4 months. And he walked away with a lethal dose or a lethal allergy to peanuts. Now, the reason why the body does this is because when you get too much of something, it thinks it's a poison and it starts to associate it as a poison. Now he's got a very lethal peanut allergy. It's 40 years later, and we had EpiPens all over the place because he was overexposed to peanuts so much that it turned into a lethal peanut allergy where his body now recognizes peanut butter as poison. Trauma is the same way. When you are overexposed to trauma and abuse, it can turn into an allergic reaction, a lethal dose of it. I have the same thing. This is why I can't go in society, is because I am now highly sensitive to abuse and maltreatment. So that if somebody makes a misogynistic remark, I am not okay. I have an allergic reaction. And look at our society. It's dripping with abuse. So the problem is you have a lot of people who are now sensitive to abuse and maltreatment. It's not a mental illness. There's no trigger. They just have an allergic reaction. And as a result, and our entire system is built on this abuse. The entire culture is an abuse-riddled culture. So when you have people who are allergic or highly sensitive to maltreatment or abuse, when they go into the society that is dripping with it, they can't function. This is why we see shut-ins. The shut-in and the social anxiety is a symptom for going out into the society because you have a high sensitivity to maltreatment and or you are allergic to abuse from overexposure of abuse that's left you with your entire subconscious mind going, oh my God, I can't be around racism. I can't be around prejudice. I can't be around hearing feminism and masculine. When I hear that, even my brain goes, oh, you're being exposed to something that's not good for you. It doesn't create a mental illness. It just, I can feel the friction and I'm highly sensitive to it. So I cannot be at a day job. I cannot be at all these things. So one of the things that I want to say right now is I believe that there are a lot of people out there who have this problem. I don't think it's a problem. I think you are just heightened and aware to the problem. The problem is the fucking abuse that's in our society today because people aren't decent. So as a result, we have this very high sensitivity now because we have had overexposure to abuse. This is not a condition at all. I don't think it should ever get a name. I'm not going to name this. No one will name this. I declare it. You just have an allergic reaction to maltreatment and abuse. That's it. And that's what I say to people. This is what I tell people. When they invite me out to a place, I'm like, I can't go. I have a significant high allergic reaction to abuse. I can't do it. And maltreatment. I can't be around it. Every time I be around it, my stomach gets sick, my brain, and then my vagal nerve shuts down and I lose complete control. That's what the vagal vascular happens. And this is why. So that's exhibit A. That's not what I'm talking about today. We're going to shelve that. That's a whole nother thing. Now, people pleasing is something different. It is when you actually get triggered and your entire mindset changes. Now, here's the difference between the allergic reaction and the mental behavior. Your mindset. When you have a high sensitivity and maltreatment and your allergic abuse happens, your mindset does not change. Your core mindset, let's call this something. I want to call it something pretty. Your authentic mindset. There you go. It is your authentic mindset. This is your natural core mindset. This is your calibrated 0.0. This is where you want to live for the rest of your life. When you mentally heal and you get rid of all of your mental illness, you land yourself at authentic mindset. This is when you're happy. This is when you are living your best life and no one's bothering you. Now, this is important. When you get exposed to maltreatment and or abuse, you keep your authentic mindset. It doesn't change. You stay you. The mental behavior, the behavioral defense changes your mindset instantly. So this is what happens under the category of a mental illness, as that society calls it. What you have is an alternative mindset. So you will have your core authentic mindset, and then you'll have your alternative mindset. Now, I'm telling you, as somebody who had 4 alters, believe me, you can feel the difference. So here's how this works. You have your core authentic mindset. That is all you. My work, Triadic Healing, all we do is get you back to your core authentic mindset. That's it. Your alternative mindset is literally the invasive perspective. You do not have an invasive perspective when you have a core authentic mindset. You don't. You've got rid of them all. Well, you might be working on getting rid of them all. There's 3 options available to you. This is not going to be pleasant. You can have your core authentic mindset and nothing else. And that is ideal. That is healthy. That is, you're all set. The other side of this is you can have your authentic mindset with an invasive perspective and you toggle. The other option is you have your authentic mindset and you have an invasive perspective and you spend more time on that invasive perspective than anywhere else. If you even have access to your authentic mindset. Your worst of narcissists are that. They're the ones who are on that invasive perspective permanently, and they never switch over. That is your grandiose narcissist. A vulnerable narcissist will toggle between the two. Somebody who flips between, oh, I'm an extrovert, I'm feeling great. No, I'm not. That is you toggling between your authentic mindset and your invasive perspective mindset. Once you're healed and you remove all the logical fallacies that create the invasive perspective, you then settle into your core authentic mindset and you stay there. And there is no other, you're done. There's nothing else to toggle between. This is where I am now. Now, this is people pleasing. People pleasing is literally slave mind. And that is what I'm calling it. Because you have been conditioned to be obedient, submissive. This is going to get real fucking ugly. It's a servitude. And it is a surplus of responsibility that is not yours. If you do not do these things, there will be consequences. The consequences, most likely, was neglect, rejection, fear, abandonment, abuse, punishment. Sound familiar? So to prevent these horrible consequences from happening, it conditioned you, the abuser conditioned you to be obedient, submissive, servitude, surplus of responsibility, and most likely silent, which is why you don't use boundaries. Depression is common when you have your slave mind mindset. And the reason why you're depressed, and that is a symptom of having this condition. It's not actually included in part of the condition itself. Depression occurs when you are grieving your authentic mindset. You get depression when you think you can't have your authentic mindset. Your authentic mindset includes your ability to dream, your goals, your wishes, your ideal lifestyle. If you can't have these, then you go into depression and you grieve the loss of them. But there's no recovering from losing the self. If you lose the self, it's not like losing a partner. You can lose a partner and maybe eventually you'll recover. Depends on how integrated they were into your identity. But if you lose a piece of your identity, if you lose yourself, you will grieve that for the rest of your life. The only cure to depression is a recovery of the self. Now, that being said, when you are in a triggered people-pleasing mindset of slave mindset, then what ends up happening is you do get depressed as well because you've lost the self. You don't think you can have it because you have to serve other people. Now, what's going on inside the mind when we have slave mind? This is my mastery. This is what I do. This was my bane for a long time. I left the system because it kept triggering my slave mind and I couldn't function. I would recognize it. So, and it's funny because I see it now, but I didn't have the words to communicate it. I tried, but I couldn't communicate it. So this is what I noticed. I noticed that I had my authentic mindset and everything was fantastic. I was empowered. I loved who I was. Everything was awesome. And then I would get triggered into this submissive, obedient mindset. Now, I would never call myself a people pleaser. And that was the thing that saved me. That's what differentiated me from everybody else. Everybody else likes to call it people pleasing. But I'm not a people pleaser. I had a trauma associated with the word people pleasing. So I rejected the label people pleasing because I didn't want to be affiliated with that. And that allowed me to delve into this deeper to figure out what it really was. Because I didn't feel like I wanted to please people. I felt like I wanted to keep my ass safe. See the difference? So when people said, "Oh, well, you're a people pleaser." No, I'm not. What I want is to keep my ass safe. So that's the agenda. Every mental illness has agenda. The agenda for people pleasing is keep your ass safe. And to do that, you need to serve, submit, be obedient, not argue, take on all the responsibility, and stay silent. I noticed that I immediately went into quiet, mousy submission. Now, there are 3 levels to this. The extreme level is the doing. That's when you jump right up and without question, you start doing everything you were told. No argument. Yeah, it's that embedded into you. The second level is the procrastination. That's when you do it, you don't want to do it. You're trying to resist it, but you're going to do it anyway. And the next level is where I lived for a while. This is the annoyance stage at the self. And this is where you fight it. But in order to fight it, you have to be at level 1. You cannot fight it at level 3. I mean, you can, but you're so deep into the mindset that you don't even realize you're doing it. In the doing stage at level 3, you are unaware and oblivious to it. In the procrastination stage, you are fighting back. And this is where the ego or your conscious awareness and your identity is starting to argue with your subconscious mind and the programming. The next stage is when you consciously fight it. Now, in order to get this done, if you are a people pleaser and you want to break out of it, this is how it's done. You need to become aware of this. Here's the video. You're becoming aware of it. So you are becoming consciously aware of what's actually taking place. Now, there's going to be triggers. We have to identify the triggers, just like in PTSD. I'm going to say again, this is not at all PTSD. Every mental illness has a trigger. Every mental illness has a trigger. If you're a narcissist, you're going to have something that triggers you to turn on the invasive perspective. If you have alters, you're going to have things, emotions that trigger each and every alter. Oh, that was fun. Because I had 4 alters, so I had to figure out which emotional response triggered each alter. And then I had 44 triggers for my PTSD. And then my borderline personality disorder. By the way, borderline personality disorder is really closely linked to this, to the slave mind. It's not, it is very different. Slave mind is the first ethic. Borderline personality disorder is the third ethic. Narcissism is the third ethic. Codependency is the second ethic. Slave mind is the first ethic. You have a compromised self-worth. Now, we're going to break this down. Once you become consciously aware, it's going to be cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy and meditation are the 2 things you are going to need to resolve this. This is how I took care of mine. I expedited it using psychedelics and marijuana. But the thing that really needed to change was value. I had to value my opinion more than other people. It is the value, and that is prioritizing. You must value. So, with your triggers, let me try and figure out some of mine here. Let me go back to mine. Oh, wow. It's been a while. Displeasure in others, disappointment. Yeah, that did not work on me. And then, yeah, upset. If others were upset, loud or screaming men. I remember this one time I was in the emergency room and this person came in screaming. It was one of the most amazing opportunities for my research ever. I could not figure out if this person was a man or a woman. I could not figure out their voice. I could not determine. But they were screaming. And it was at a time when I was in my full height of, I associate screaming men with PTSD. If it was a man, the trigger would start. If it were a woman, I'd be fine. But my subconscious mind could not figure that out. So I got to exist for 30 minutes in a time bubble of my PTSD trigger going, which way? And it literally couldn't make up its mind. It couldn't make up my mind. It was extraordinary to witness because it literally sat there toggling between trigger, not a trigger, trigger, not a trigger. And it couldn't figure it out. It could not figure it out. I had to ask the police officer, is that a man or a woman? And he said, oh, that's a woman. Ah, boom, instantly. My subconscious mind dropped it and went, oh, we're fine. And I never triggered. But I lived for 30 minutes toggling between trigger, not a trigger. That person was on methamphetamine. And instead, I turned the entire evening into I get to sit there up close and personal and watch the behavior, inductive reasoning, of somebody with a methamphetamine addiction going through withdrawal. So that was informative. Yeah, that was very informative. I have no deduction whatsoever because I could only observe. I couldn't be inside of her head to know what was going on. But that is the precision of a subconscious mind toggling between a trigger. Knowing the triggers is vital. And then having a reaction time. This is pretty much what is working against you is your reaction time. And the only way you can expand out your reaction time is meditation. Nothing else. Nothing else going to work here. Nothing else is going to do this. If you have any kind of a mental illness and you are looking to increase your reaction time, you have to meditate. That's all this does. When you meditate, your only goal is to learn how to stop, pause, and observe. It's literally how you learn. If you study Plato, then you will know how to learn. And how we learn is through silent, unprejudiced observation. And that is what you are doing when you are meditating. You are actually putting into practice Plato's work, which is why I am so gung-ho about Plato and meditation, is because the two of them are literally hand in hand. So you are literally increasing your reaction time when you meditate. Now you're going to take that reaction time with cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's going to plug in so that when you have a catalyst go off, like a combustion engine, exactly like a combustion engine. So you're going to have that ignited spark and boom, immediate reaction. We're back to physics again. So when this happens, what ends up happening is there is an instantaneous response, a reaction time to this happening. You want to increase the reaction time. And in order to do that, you have to meditate and learn how to slow down your reaction time so that when the trigger goes off, there is this moment, this pause, and then you respond. And if you can when you meditate, when you learn how to increase your reaction time, you feel the trigger and then you are interrupting and then you are expanding this. And the more you make it, the wider you make this reaction time, the less the less you react. Eventually, there will be no reaction time. So that when you hear one of your triggers, it expands and there's nothing there. You're fine. So in order to dissect this down to really see what's going on, it's basically identifying the trigger. You have to know what triggers you so you can prepare for it. You have to use positive affirmations to recondition your RAS system inside your subconscious mind. I use manifestation to do this, where I'm literally conditioning your RAS. That is your reticulated. Oh, I hate this word. I cannot remember it because it's the most junky conglomerate of words. So I just cannot get it. I need to put it on my computer. Okay, I need to make sure I wrote RAS for psychology. Reticular. It's that word. What is it? Reticular activating system. Yeah, I need to look up reticular. What the hell does that mean? Reticular? Doesn't even sound like it's the right verb. Like to reticulate? Reticular. What does that even mean? Reticular. I just want the word reticular. Sounds like a scientist botched a basic grammar word because he was a scientist and not a grammar person. What does reticular mean? No, I'm doing this right now, people, because I can't do this one more day. Reticular definition. It's an adjective. Reticular is an adjective. I think my Spanish language is getting confused because I'm seeing AR. So I'm going, no, that's a verb. That's what's throwing me off, I think, because I'm hearing reticular. That's it exactly. I'm hearing reticular and I'm going, okay, so that's a verb to what? So I'm in verb mode. It's an adjective in English. So where's the etymology? Characterized by a fine network or a net-like structure. Let's look up the etymology. Okay, so it sounds like it's a network. So it's the network articulation, reticulate. Yeah, comes from the Latin word reticulum, meaning small net. So it is wrong. It should have been reticulate. That makes so much more sense. Yeah, this is a scientist who didn't study grammar because he was a scientist, not a grammarist. All right, so it's reticulate. See, this is why words matter, people. So reticulate. Why would that be an adjective? Yeah, see, everything popped up reticular. See, I typed in reticular etymology, and it came back correcting it, saying, no, it's reticulate. Casting a net. And it's from the Latin reticularis. Yeah, reticularis. So it looks like they just cut off the IS, reticularis, and now it's reticular, when AR is also part of Latin because they didn't study Latin. So it should be reticulate. Reticulate, let me see here. But it's an adjective. Yeah, I don't know what they've done. Articulating system. Now let's go back to RAS. RAS. And then definition for psychology. All right. Activating system. That's there's two adjectives back to back. Reticular activating system. It's like saying a short, a small system. That's literally how that translates. Not short, small. That was an example. But it's two adjectives with the word system. Yeah. The modifier is whoever named this is sloppy. They didn't. Oh, my brain is screaming. Okay, well, that explains why I can't remember it, is because it's illogical. My brain does that. If it's illogical, I won't learn it. It's like, no, reject. Why can't you learn it? Now I know why I can't learn it. Is because it's two adjectives and an S. So it's a system. So it's the reticulated. I'm going to have to correct that because that's just terrible. That's the two adjectives in a system. Oh, my God. All right. So two adjectives in a system, the RAS. That is your articulation system. So basically, that is the filter inside of our minds, our brains, that prevent us from seeing everything. It's a filter. So if you're traumatized, basically, well, here you go. This is a great example. I heard screaming men when I was 8, and it traumatized me so severely that I ended up with multiple personality disorder. So, yeah, you want to know how significantly damaging screaming is? It caused my multiple personality disorder. Screaming caused my multiple personality disorder. There. That's how fucking damaging screaming is to a mind. Now, when I was 8, I heard screaming men, and that fused into my system of look for men, look for men, look for men. Now, I developed PTSD with that, and I also developed it also created the multiple personality disorder. So, I had screaming men in my PTSD programming for a long time. I would filter my RAS would look for screaming men. My RAS would shut down, I would have tunnel vision, and it would just look for screaming men, and it would filter for it. So that is your RAS system. And I use manifestation and positive affirmations to recondition the RAS system so it stops filtering. So it opens up and becomes wider. So when you are dealing with cognitive behavioral dissonance and trigger, the first thing is you have to know what your triggers are. You have to identify them because that is going to be the clue that tells you when you're going to have a problem. The next is you're going to want to recondition your RAS system using positive affirmations so that it stops filtering for these things. It's basically normalizes these things. It takes them from trauma trigger down to normal. The third thing that I then walk a person through is meditation to start expanding and increasing their reaction time. So we do meditation, and then we come up with a plan. And the plan is what's going to happen when you do have a trigger and if you don't catch it in time. So it's recognizing, a lot of it is recognizing it. Recognition is a huge part of this. They say awareness, and it's like, okay, there's awareness, there's recognition, and this is the 3 part of getting help with mental illness. You have awareness, you have recognition, and then the next part is education, knowledge. Now, there is a difference between education and awareness, and I've had people argue with me about this, and this is the difference. I can sit here and educate you, but it's the moment of, oh my God, that is how I can relate to it. That's your awareness. It is when you can make it relatable. So you can absorb the education, but if you can't relate to it, you're not aware. You have to become educated and you have to be relatable. You have to make it relatable to you. So when I educate you, when you're watching this, how many times have you gone, oh my God, that is you taking it from education over to relatable. Now you have awareness. It's a formula. It's educated plus relatable equals awareness. There you go. So when people say awareness is the first step, no, it's not. No, it's not. That's a consequence. It's educated plus relatable equals awareness. But because we hate education in our culture, well, that's the problem now, isn't it? So, educated plus relatable equals awareness. And now the goal is to recognize it. Now, the more you become aware, educated, and relatable, the more you recognize it, the more you start moving from, and by the way, this is all mental illness. This is not just slave mind. This is all of them. That's when you become the aware. That's when you go from the 3rd level of being unaware and oblivious, and you're just on autopilot. That is literally the autopilot stage of the mental disease, mental illness, behavioral defense. Let's call it behavioral defense. And then there is the procrastination where your subconscious mind starts to fight it back and you procrastinate. That's when you get depressed and you sit down and you shut down and you do nothing because you don't want to do it. That's you starting to fight back. That's your identity going, yeah, but I don't want to. And your subconscious mind going, yeah, but if we don't, then we're not going to be safe. And identity goes, yeah, but I don't want to. And then that last stage is when you become consciously aware and you start making a plan to start fighting against your subconscious mind. Not fighting against, because you cannot fight against your subconscious mind. That's when you start working as a team with your subconscious mind. Teamwork, teamwork. And yes, this is literally for every mental illness. Behavioral defense. This is used for PTSD. This is used for addictions. Now, I'm going to say this. Addictions, eating disorders, and self-mutilation are the same thing. The exact same thing is inside the brain doing the exact same thing in the exact same cycle. Subconscious mind-wise, they are identical. Identical. Which is why people who have eating disorders also usually self-mutilate. People with addictions almost always also have an eating disorder. It's the same creature. The creature needs its own name to summarize these three things. And the problem is basically your self-worth is compromised. You don't believe you have self-worth. In the case of an eating disorder, eating means you have no self-worth. In the case of self-mutilation, you have no self-worth. In the case of addiction, it's trying to escape, to feel like you have control because you feel like you have no self-worth. It's all over and over again self-worth based. Once you get that first ethic learned and internalized, you're fine. So you have PTSD, you have the addiction, eating disorder, and self-mutilation, the first ethic deprivation. Then you have codependency. Oh, I skipped slave mindset. You have slave mindset. I had a thought last night about schizophrenia, and I want to do more research on that because I have a feeling I know what it is, and it's not a mental disease at all. There's codependency, and then there's borderline personality disorder, and then there is narcissism. And borderline personality is the third perspective. Multiple personality disorder is a defense. All of these are defenses. But multiple consciousness disorder, depression, I call those, basically there's tiers. The first tier is alter the behavior. The first tier is alter the behavior. The second tier is basically when you have a symptom from altering the behavior. It's funny because multiple personality disorder, multiple consciousness disorder, I don't view that at all as anything in here. Like, not at all. And there's a reason why. It's I'll get into it later, but that is an absolute standalone. That's over there. Depression is over there. Those are not part of this. Something else is completely going on. Depression is just grief. And that's not anything wrong. It's not something you can treat. Consciousness disorder that's the Civil War. All of this is Civil War. The alters is just the next level of a civil war. It's when you hate yourself so much that you start ripping yourself up into pieces. That's what it is. So basically, all of this is a civil war. It's your identity versus your subconscious mind. And you have your authentic self, and then you're abused, and it splits into invasive perspective and authentic self. And that's when you can get all these disorders. But if that's not good enough, then boom. All right, now it's time to start ripping apart the identity and creating multiple consciousnesses. So technically, multiple personality disorder, multiple consciousness disorder could actually be a branch off of each and every one of these. And by the way, dissociation is fucking bullshit and has nothing to do with this. Dissociation is basically your fight. They call it fight or flight, and that's bullshit. Dissociation is your flop response. That's all it is. It's your flop. Your fawn or flop. Dissociation is just flopping. That's all it is. It's your shutdown. It's when you feel nothing and you go numb. It's numbness. That is dissociation. And it has nothing to do with multiple personality disorder. So the idea of them calling it dissociative identity, fuck you. That's what I have to say to psychologists. You don't know what you're talking about. Fuck you. Trust me, there was plenty of emotion all over the place. There was no dissociating. That is a bunch of sloppy assholes watching, what is it called? Using inductive reasoning to try and figure shit out that they know nothing about. No. We're not going to do that shit. It's an offense when people, of all the disorders, multiple personality disorder, with how people treat it, is just downright fucking offensive. And it's like, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. So it's one that I don't like the way people think that they know what it is when they don't. So this is all it is. It's a civil war. It's you versus yourself. It's literally man versus himself. You cannot get more storybook than that. Yeah. And then you're ending the Civil War and you're putting it all back together again. You're reverse engineering it. You're integrating the self. Integration actually applies to every mental disorder, every one of them, because you are integrating into the authentic core mindset, which was taken away from you. So that is people pleasing, which is slave mindset. That's really what's going on. All right. There was one more thing. Oh, yeah, schizophrenia. I won't cover this here. I'll start a new video for schizophrenia. But I have some really ugly news about schizophrenia, and I know it's going to make me angry. I have a really solid belief on schizophrenia, and it's not going to be pretty. But I think I need to do it. All right. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.